Today, we are living in perilous times. Whether it's worries about the rising price of food or gas or water, whether it's fear about the global village and the hegemony of international capital, which has less and less regard for ordinary working peoples, whether it's the heightened mantra of right-wing governments in Ottawa or Washington, D.C., and the continued use of war as diplomacy, whether it's the erosion of the earth and the impact this has on all of us who feel the effects of global warming and are fearful of continued environmental disasters, killing wildlife, polluting the skies, reducing forest growth, or drowning our waters in waste, whether it's nightmares about terrorism or its flip side of racial profiling, whether it's the seemingly silent violence of the glass ceiling or the overt violence that greets First Nations land claims or is invoked in hate crimes, whether it's the continued impact of heterosexism as the social norm and its spillover into gay bashings, whether it's the arrival of peoples from around the world hopeful for a new start in life only to find themselves delivering pizza or driving cabs while their sorely needed skills and education are wasted, whether it's the efforts of marginalized workers, mostly women of color, attempting to unionize in the private sector, whether it's the constant attacks on our public services, healthcare, education, childcare, pension benefits, employment insurance. All of these factors swirl around us today in a dizzying haze of what I really think is the violence of domination. A domination which falls from the hands of distant, unconcerned, and rapacious leaders of the marketplace, industry, cultural, and political spaces. There can be no doubt that First Nations and racialized people, women, queer persons, and those with disabilities, immigrants, refugees, Muslims, and individuals from other marginalized groups face the most significant challenges. This is what we know. This is why you are here as delegates to this convention, to give voice to these concerns and to articulate them without a sense of shame and with a sense of responsibility and obligation, first and foremost for yourselves, and then secondly for your brother or sister sitting next to you. We know that First Nations communities have an extraordinarily high infant mortality rate, lower life expectancy rate, and higher suicide rate than any other Canadians. This is not debatable. Many First Nations communities as well do not have adequate drinking water, and some of their lands are being eroded by corporate profiteering, which destroys the environment and poisons the earth. We know that racism is being more and more seen as a life-inhibiting factor. When you see complaints of individuals who are highly qualified spending 4 or 5 years in human rights processes just to get justice. Women continue to face street and domestic violence, the glass ceiling in workplaces, lower wages than men, and have less influence on corporate policies and political decision-making than men. We know that persons with disabilities struggle with acceptance in education, public transportation, access to arts and cultural activities, as well as employment opportunities. We know that queer people face some of the most violent of hate crimes, wide-ranging prejudice in the public domain, fear of being outed in their workplaces, or having hard-fought gains eroded through persistent legislative attacks.